To the channel, everybody. So we've got an iron comparison video for you today, and it's two real big heavyweights for me in this category. It's that player's sort of look with that forgiveness but a little bit of power, and we've got this new TaylorMade P790, so the third generation. Done a full review, go and check that out if you want to look a bit more in depth, but really popular iron from TaylorMade. And that's going up against the Callaway Apex 21 iron. So two great looking clubs in my opinion, a little bit stronger on the loft, looking for a little bit of power, but what about that feel? Are these the ultimate irons in golf? Is it the looks, the feel, the performance? We're going to check these out and compare these two irons and maybe see if this is something that you'd want to go out and try yourselves. Okay, so we're going to kick things off. We're going to start with the Callaway, so the Apex 21. Obviously they do a few different models in that Apex range, but the Apex 21 is the sort of offering that forged head, that forged feel, that player's sort of desirable sort of feel, with quite a nice sort of look to it. Now, when I say a nice look to it, it's a shape in there. It isn't massively oversized in the head, but there is quite a bit of offset on that club. A sort of thickish top edge, to be honest, but the shaping of it is really nice. That sort of like little bit of satin on the ends there is good. And obviously the bag appeal in the back, it looks great. That little bit of polished bit where it says Apex, just a bit of badging logo in, does look very, very good. So I think a lot of golfers would aspire to maybe using this type of club. I'm just thinking more of the golfer who's probably trying to progress away from that game improvement iron, that cast head, maybe wanting something forged, a little bit softer feel, but still needs that element of forgiveness and maybe a little bit of power in that as well. So 7 iron, I'm going to hit. I've got both these irons spec'd up pretty much the same. 30.5 degrees of loft. Oh, that's a wonderful strike. I've just pulled that a tiny bit. Super flight, super strike. So the Apex iron is 100% forged from a 1025 carbon steel in the body there. So we have got that that sort of feel, and straight away there you get that sort of forged feel from this particular club. That's a better bit straight on that shot. Again, lovely strike, lovely flight to that. You can sort of definitely see, you know, you can tell it's that 30.5 degrees of loft. The ball does come off fair, you know, for a forged iron, quite sharp in a way is probably what I'd say. You can really see it come off, firing off that club face. That spin rate's just a little bit low. That's the only thing that sort of sometimes concerns me. We get into these little lofts, the spin can just drop a little bit. Again, is that always a trade-off, isn't there? As you drop the loft, the spin sometimes just drops. Just a touch right. Again, the strike was pretty decent. Good ball speed, 126 sort of speed you expect to see from that type of loft. 184 on the carry, so it's powerful. You know, that ball speed, that's slightly lower on that spin number. Obviously, it's going to create that little bit of distance. So that's obviously, as I say, is quite desirable for a lot of golfers. Maybe the only thing I would just say a little bit there is how does that control when it comes into land? That's only my concern. But having said that, you can see the land angle at 50 degrees. It's got the heights there, isn't it? 115 feet on the height on that shot. The land angle has got the stopping power in itself in a way. It is a nice flight. You've got to say that is a very nice ball flight on that, the way it launches, the peak of that flight. So quite a bit of technology in this Apex iron. We've got that artificial face technology, which we've seen in the drivers for a few seasons now. First time they brought it into an iron is in this Apex range. So it, you know, there's a lot of work around sort of getting that ball speed up across that club face. Very difficult to sort of really measure that and actually sort of test that, to be honest, but you just got to try and sort of believe that that's there to help you a little bit. Well, a little bit heely, touch weak on that one, just a bit cutty up that right. Just see that ball speed just drop a tiny bit there. Yeah, just a little bit of a short right one. Okay, so 6 shots hit there with the Apex. Let's move into the brand new TaylorMade P790. Right, okay, so P790, brand new from TaylorMade. As I say, this is the third generation of the P790. They've just made some little tweaks as they've gone along, but being one of TaylorMade's biggest selling irons. So you ain't going to be changing this too much in that front, are you? But there is a little bit more differences under the bonnet. Again, I've done the full review, a little bit more in depth in terms of technology, but again, we're going to hit this up against the Apex. So loft-wise, exactly the same, 30.5. So very much an iron is in that category. You know, moving away from that sim iron, you know, more game improvement as you may be wanting to upgrade and progress into that more P series, which stands for players irons, bit more of that nicer look, nicer finish, looks like a blade. We know it's not a blade, it's hollow construction. We've got that foam inside, which is saving weight, tungsten in there. So there's quite a bit of tech, you know, speed slot in the bottom in terms of trying to help. And again, the shape of the head is really nice. Just comparing that up against the Apex as a side-by-side comparison. And I think that TaylorMade has just got a slightly longer blade length. And we saw that from the older P790 in relation to the new one, just a slightly longer blade length. The toe section's very sort of similar, quite sort of rounded, maybe a touch more rounded in the Apex, but quite similar, to be honest. Top edge, I'm going to say Apex is a fraction thicker, and the offset there is a little bit more on that Apex. Okay, so again, these are subtle little things. Some golfers don't notice those things at all. Some aren't bothered about that. Some are a little bit more fussy than others. So again, it's more of a personal preference, but again, good looking club. A little bit more of a satin finish with the P790 in comparison to the Apex. That looked to fly a little bit higher. Nice straight shot to start with. Ball speed good, 127. Just short of 127. Similar spin, 187 carry. So similar sort of numbers there. It looked to be a little bit higher on that flight there, to be honest. Launch maybe just a touch higher. Did sort of see that in the comparison to the previous P790. The new one is a bit more tungsten, or more weight of tungsten in the bottom of the club here. So low in that CG tends to feel like you can, or promote that slightly higher launch, which again is never a bad thing, you know, getting that stopping power on that land angle. Good shot. It's a good feel to that ball speed there. That club head a little bit quicker there, 190, 91 club head speed, smidge quicker. A bit more carry with that. Yeah, so sound wise, I think between those two, we know with the P790 is that hollow head. Sometimes that is as I mentioned this on numerous videos with hollow head design irons, we get sometimes that little clickier sort of sound. But obviously we know this is filled with a foam. So, and that, I think, as I've seen in previous models there with the TaylorMade, it just dampens that acoustics, just dampens that sound a little bit more. So it is a little bit more of a better feel for a hollow head. And bear in mind, this is only forged face. So the back of the head is I think it's a 1025 carbon steel, but it's not forged, the actual body, but the face is forged. So whereas the Apex is a fully forged body, obviously it isn't hollow in the Apex, just got that open cavity. Oh, that was a very similar one to that Apex I hit, that little low heel, a little bit of a cutty weak one. Let's see that drop off a bit short right there. Yeah, you go, it's pretty much identical to that Apex one I hit. So I always like to keep these tests as equal as I can. That's a better strike there, that ball back up nice and high, a little bit straighter. That looks to have gone a fair distance as well. Get our ball speed up, 128. That spin just dropped a little bit. You're going to squeeze some extra yards out there, 194. That's probably my only real sort of concerns with these type of irons. You do get a couple of low spinners in there. Again, subtleties of strike is going to change that spin. But that feels really good. The sound is good. I think it's very, very similar to the Apex in terms of that sound. The looks are just subtly different there, to say a little bit more. Let's get these two side by side again here. Just a little bit more of that offset with the Apex, a little bit thicker top edge, bit more squat in the blade length, so it makes it look a little bit shorter and fatter in a way. Whereas the TaylorMade, just a little bit slimmer top edge, a little bit longer blade length, probably just doesn't make it look as chunky. Okay, that's a good strike just to finish up with there, just a tiny bit up that right, but a good strike. Working out, yeah, 5.5 spin, 186 carry. Okay, right, there's 6 shots hit with each of those irons. Let's go and check a few numbers out and see which is performing better on those two clubs. So as you've seen, was worked through those shots there. I've kept the dispersion rings on there for a little bit of a change instead of maybe just the strike. So just see, very similar for, you know, I've had that little pushy weak, couple of real weak necky ones there with each of those irons, very similar. Couple, one up the left TaylorMade, couple up the left with the Apex. So a little bit spread from left to right there, a bit wider than maybe what I would normally do. A couple of hotter ones maybe with the TaylorMade. Let's look at the numbers a little bit more detail. So we see the Callaway on the bottom, so 89.3, 90.8. So I've moved that TaylorMade a bit quicker. I don't know why, because the weight of the shaft's exactly the same, length was the same. Flex was exactly the same, so there's no difference there. So that's probably just giving us that little bit of extra ball speed just purely through that club head speed. So I think if the TaylorMade was moving at the same speed, I'd probably expect to see that ball speed pretty similar at 124 that the Apex was. Both exactly the same lofts, aren't they? So Apex launching at 19. 18.2 there's just a bit of a low on there, that second shot hit, but the others, a few of them did sort of feel like they launched a little bit higher and climbed a little bit higher, and there was a tiny bit on average. Again, that low one there has just pulled that down. If it sort of took that one out, if I untick that for now, you see 115, 110, yeah, a little bit higher launch, just sort of saw that a tiny bit visually. Spin numbers, see a little bit more spin with the TaylorMade 5466 on average. Again, I did have that low one there, but probably that little bit of speed there, just creating that little bit more spin in comparison to the Apex. But both obviously on that lower spin brackets, that 30.5 degree of loft, isn't it? That's sometimes the issue there. Real low one there, we see with the Callaway. You know, probably just caught that a little bit heavy. Might have just pulled that a tiny bit as well, you know, just rips that spin down quite a bit. So probably if you take that one out, yeah, there you go, you're pretty sort of similar, aren't you? So not massive amounts in it, but they're all in that, both in that sort of slight low area. But you can see land angle 48, 48.6. You know, we've got that descent, sorry, 49 and 48.6. Got that descent angle coming into land. You know, and quite a sort of giving a bit of stopping power in itself, isn't it? Right, okay, so for me, two popular irons there. As I say, it ticks a lot of boxes there. There's always going to be trade-offs, isn't there, when you go into that slightly stronger loft. Even though the flight is quite high, we've got that descent angle, which you wouldn't associate with a more straighter-faced golf club. But with that weight in the bottom more with these types of irons, tungsten in there with, say, the TaylorMade, it does help to get that launch up, even though they are quite strong. The spin does just drop a little bit, but again, everybody's a little bit different on their delivery. So again, my message to you is always go and get fit for these. You know, go and try them yourselves, tighten your delivery, obviously dialing the shafts, the length, lies, everything like that to try and optimize your sort of launch and your spin conditions. Get that consistency. That's the key, isn't it? If we've got something that's consistent, we sort of know what it's going to do. At the end of the day, with that iron, you're going to pick it out for hit a certain yardage, aren't you? You want it to go that yardage. So we don't maybe want too many of those sort of flying shots or flyers that we can maybe get on the golf course. So post comments down below. P790 Apex, what's your call? I'd love to hear your thoughts as always. Appreciate you watching the video. If you've enjoyed it, please consider hitting that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. If you have, appreciate your support. There'll be plenty more videos coming your way, and hopefully we'll catch up with you all very soon.